I turn from my old ways of doing things new. I hate what I love, but I'm trying, man, it's true. I'm fighting every day in my mind through and through, please.
This is The Breaking Point. I'm your host, John Legacy J. And on this channel, we're going to talk about all types of stuff, y'all. But it's all going to be from a biblical Christian point of view. Today, probably seen in the title, we're going to talk about pornography and sexual immorality, especially for the believer, because in today's day and age, we like to justify everything. We like to say, well, I just need it for creativity and marriages and, to spice things up a little bit. But let's see what the Bible has to say about it, because the Bible is the final authority. As a believer, we should be living by the word of God and not by our old fleshly desires. In the book of Romans, actually, let me go to it right now. Romans 12, 1 through 2. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So first thing we see here is sacrifice, sacrificing our desire, sacrifice who we once were. The Bible says that when we became saved, we became a new creation, right? So the old man has to die away. And some of that old man still rests inside of us, because it's those old fleshly desires that we can't really break away from, and we make excuses as to why it's okay and why we could still do it. In marriages, for some men, it's because, hey, my wife's not putting out, so this is better than me going out and having sex with another woman. But when we look in the Bible, specifically in Matthew 5:27 through 29, what Jesus has to say about sexual immorality, it sheds new light on what it actually is. Because some people think it's just, I'm out there, I'm out having sex with a whole bunch of people, whether it's male or female, and as long as I'm not doing that, I'm good in God's eyes. But that's to the contrary. Let's go to it. Matthew 5:27 through 29. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, right? We all know what that is, committing adultery. That's what Jesus said. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully, or a man, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Jesus is just showing how important it is for us to break away from sin, and whatever thing we need to do to break away from that, we need to do it. Now, some people might be thinking literally, I'm gonna just cut my arms off, but Jesus is emphasizing the importance of breaking away from sin, because he said one member of our body, in this case it can be our eyes and what we're viewing, can cause us to go to hell. And we don't want that, right? We don't want that at all. We want to make sure that we are presenting our bodies as living sacrifices to God. And what does that actually mean? It means we have to sacrifice some of those lustful desires we had when we were in the world, right? We have to sacrifice that. We can't keep going on living this double life or justifying it. Now, it's a difference between those who know that it's wrong and they're struggling with it and they're trying to work through it. Right? Because I was that guy. I knew it was wrong. I feel bad every time I indulged in it earlier on in my, in life. And it was just like, it was a stronghold, right? But then you have those who justify it and try to say, well, it's okay because of this, it's okay because of that. I was, not too long ago, I was watching a married couple. Of course they're a couple, but they're in leadership. They're in spiritual leadership. And they were talking about how it was okay to watch porn as married people and you're Christian. And the scripture they love throwing out there, out of context, 100% out of context, is Hebrews 13:4. Hebrews 13:4. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. It says, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled. They stop right there. They don't go anywhere further past that, right? They stop right there. They're like, well, the bed is undefiled. I can have a threesome. The bed is undefiled. We can do whatever we want to do. We can invite her, him. It don't matter. Into this room, we can do what we want to do. The marriage bed is undefiled. So what does the word undefiled mean? We're going to keep reading because you got to keep reading after that. Well, defiled means made foul, dirty, unclean, polluted, or tainted. All right, so that's what that means. But we're going to keep reading, and I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break it down so you're not caught up in that trap, because I've even heard religious leaders justify certain things. I'm like, nah, that's not right. We need to take our cultural point of views, our westernized cultural point of views out of this, because when the Bible was written, it wasn't written in this time. So you have to actually study and see what it was talking about then. And you have to look at what's holy, what's not holy, right? What is God saying? What is God saying is holy, and what is he saying is not? So if you keep reading, and it's the same verse, he says, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. So if you're a Christian thinking, you can add porn into the mix, you can add a third wheel, fourth wheel into the mix, he's saying adulterers and whoremongers God will judge. So what does he really mean about the bed being undefiled? He's meaning that it's pure. He's giving a distinction. The writer of Hebrews is giving a distinction between sex within a marriage and sex outside of a marriage. It's that cut and dry. Sex within a marriage is fine. Sex outside of the marriage, with adultery, whoremongers, all of those things that you're doing outside of a marriage, God is judging that. Flat out. That's what it's saying. We like to add our spins and everything on it to justify our own lust and desire, saying, well, I don't believe it say that because my pastor, I don't care. I don't care about, God don't care about what someone else says to please their own flesh. Twisting the scriptures, because those who teach the word are held at a higher standard. So anything that might be left to anyone going down a path of destruction, I'm not going to encourage that, and if that's something you do as a leader, just keep it between yourself and God, and don't push that on everybody else, because obviously, it's some work that needs to be done, and just don't spread that. It's wrong, right? So the marriage bed is undefiled. So he's giving a distinction between what's right in the marriage, as far as having sex, and how it's not right outside of a marriage. So how do we get to, this whole porn thing, and how is it bad and things like that? Well, you got to go a little deeper. If we read Romans 1:28 through 32, I'm not going to read, well, I guess I could. I got time. It's my channel. I can go as long as I want, right? Right. All right. Let's go. Romans 1:28 through 32. And I'm gonna tell you why. We'll give biblical proof, because some people they just need proof. They're like, that's a gray area. I'm gonna just go ahead and do it. I'm like, I wouldn't play with this type of stuff, y'all. I won't play with it. But okay. He says, furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. That's messed up. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteousness decrees that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these things, but also approve of those who practice them. So we're looking at, even though sexual immorality wasn't listed here, it's listed in other scriptures in the Bible as something that God is not with. And we read that early on when we talked about Matthew. But it's those who approve sin. So when people are watching pornography, it's usually between a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a man. It nowadays it's everything, you know. But the thing is, it's sin. They're not married. There's something sacred that shouldn't be put on public display. And by you watching it, you're approving of it. And it says, not only these people are bad in Romans 1:28-32, because of the things that they did, they approved it, right? So when we watch certain things that are sinful, we are approving it, right? That's a heart condition. Because some things, like if you were to watch right now, God forbid, a child get gunned down in the street and you disapproved of that, that's a heart condition, saying that's wrong. That child should not have been gunned down. That is a wrong thing to do. God is going to judge them. We all have that. We'll all have that in our conscience. This is wrong. Well, most of us should. That shouldn't have been done. God is looking for us to have that same mentality towards all sin. This is wrong. These people should not be doing this, right? But let's talk about the difficult part here. And I'm breaking away from like my notes because, you know, I write notes just to keep myself centered. I don't want to be all over the place. The difficult part is living in a world where it's always in your face, right? It's like telling somebody, hey, I know you're hungry, but that food over there you can't eat. It makes it difficult. This is the reality of it all. It makes it difficult because you came out of a world where you developed an appetite for it. And now you're being told you got to shut that off. One thing to keep into mind, and that's why it's important that we read our word. There was a man by the name of Daniel who lived in this place called Babylon. Babylon was full of idolatry. They did whatever they wanted to do there. Even the king at one point wanted people to worship him, right? When Daniel first arrived in Babylon with his friends, they were told, because they were wise men, they were very smart, and the king changed their names, and he wanted them to eat food. Like he said, just, come in here, eat food. We're going to teach you our customs and our ways here. And Daniel refrained from eating the food. And I'm going to tell you why. Most people refer to it as a Daniel fast, but Daniel wasn't fasting. He was abstaining from food that was not, he was not to eat based on his customs and his religion, Levitical laws and things of that nature. They could not eat certain food. So he did not eat them because he knew, just because it was presented to me and it looked good, that doesn't mean I throw away my beliefs, I throw away my teachings, and I throw away everything that I know is right just to fit in and to please the king, right? So I understand it can be hard at times when we're presented with all these things. And Daniel was in the king's court, y'all. He was there, like he was at the higher up. And some of us, we would have folded. We would have been like, shoot, they offering this, I'm gonna eat it. And that's what our own appetites throughout life in all areas, like our sexual appetites and things of that nature. We have to know when not to eat the food that the world is serving us, because it's not good for us. It would have defiled, when we talk about defiling, marriage bed was undefiled, Daniel would have been defiled by eating that food, right? So it's just important that even though all of these things are presented to us and in front of us, that we maintain our holiness. And we have to know the word for ourselves. Don't go off of old religious wives' tales of what people say that doesn't line up with scripture. There's a lot of ignorance out there. And if you don't read the Bible for yourself or go to a Bible-believing church who teaches the word how it's supposed to be taught, then you will fall for it. And at Judgment Day, we won't have any excuse because we all had a Bible. Either you got a paperback one or you got the app. You could have read it, right? Right? Those are the rules that we should live by. I remember getting pulled over one time. Don't judge me. I was driving down the street and all I did was burn rubber. But I was in a suburb, right? And I burnt rubber. I had my little brother in the car. This was like years back. I had just bought a new car. And the police officer pulled me over. Now, I grew up in Detroit. You wasn't getting pulled over for burning rubber. Like, I did not, to me, I didn't break any law. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't speeding. I just burnt rubber. And the officer pulled me over. And he said, hey, you know why I pulled you over? I said, no. Like I said, I grew up in Detroit. Well, no issue. He was like, I pulled you over because you squealed your tires. I'm like, and? He was like, that's illegal. I'm like, no, it's not. He was like, yes, it is. It's an improper start of your vehicle. So I'm like, oh, I'm fighting this. I'm taking this to court. They ain't about to get me on this one because that ain't right. You know, all I did was squeal tires. What's the problem with that? So when I went to court, I spoke to the judge and I was like, you know, how is this illegal? He was like, well, it's improper start of vehicle. He started citing all this stuff. And I said, well, I didn't know that. He said, ignorance is no excuse for the law. So my ignorance was no excuse for breaking the law. And I took that and I thought about that like, man, how many of us are ignorant and have willful ignorance? We have the laws presented in front of us. We have, when it comes to God's law and how we should live, but we willfully won't open up the book because we know once we read it, we're going to be accountable and we got to do it. So when it comes to this sexual immorality and watching pornography in marriage, outside of marriage, you know, even though you might not want to read the Bible and understand what it says about it because you just want to do what you want to do, at the end of the day, God is still going to hold you accountable for it. So it's important that, you know, we have to try to face it and deal with it. For me, it was something that came on early on in my teenage years that I was introduced to, and it was hard to break free from later on. Especially, like I said, with if you're married or not married, and like I said, all these images are in front of you all day. You know, you can't. I mean, you could just be on a reel, and then an advertisement's coming up, and you like, I didn't want to see this. Like, I'm really trying to fight. You know, not me personally, but you out there might be like, I'm trying to fight not watching this stuff, but it's being presented in front of me. So how do you break free from this stuff? I talked about how, you know, it's not right. I talked about all this stuff, but how do you break free from it? How do you get away from it? How do you stop doing it? One, for those who believe they need it for innovation and to spice up things, God gave you an imagination. You don't need to see it to do it. Examples, inventors. They didn't see anything before they built it. They didn't see an iPhone before it came out. They didn't see a car. They didn't see these things. They invented it. They used their imagination. We are made in the image and likeness of God. God is the most creative person. I can't even say creative person. God is creative, right? And if we're made in his image and likeness, we can be creative too. So just be creative without all that stuff. Second thing, fasting. So we have to fast to get control of our flesh. We pour in more of the Spirit, and we eliminate that flesh when we deny ourselves things that we like. And don't do like the little fast where I heard one person say, I'm fasting from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. You sleeping. That ain't no real fast, man. You sleeping. No, do a challenging fast. I know when I was like early on in life, when I started fasting and stuff, it wasn't a true fast because I was thinking like I work out. I was really into fitness. Still am. And we're going to do some videos on that too. But anyway, I was thinking like, I still got to get my calories. So I'm not going to eat food, but I'm going to drink protein. Just cut it all out. It's not about you when you fast. It's about God. It's about denying your flesh and getting a deeper connection spiritually with God, right? So fasting is going to be one of the best things that you could do to break free from any type of thing that your flesh desires, because it's going to be kicking and screaming the whole time. The first thing you're going to think about is, I can't go without food. I'm going to get a headache. oh, I can't go without food. What am I going to do? How can I work? How can I do it? You can do it. And I'll tell you some things on how you start off doing it. First thing you want to do is prep your body for it. Don't go just from eating 3 square meals a day into the next day fasting and not eating nothing. You got to prep yourself. So the beginning of the week, you fasted next week, start off with 2 meals. And then after that, go to like at some point throughout that week, maybe 3rd day into it, cut down to 1 meal. Drink a lot of water. Start getting your fluid intake in then. And then that Sunday, if you're fasting on Monday, that's when you just stop eating. You got to taper that desire to eat off, and that helps out too. So we got fasting. The other thing is guarding your ears and your eyes. I'm at a place now, I don't even watch rated R movies. Can't do it. Because why? Like, either you're feeding your flesh or your spirit, and whichever one you're feeding is getting stronger. Remember that. Whichever one you feed will get stronger. Right? So it's just like any athlete. Like, you feed that athlete, he's gonna have more power. You're gonna have more strength, he's gonna have more speed. So if you are feeding your flesh, it's gonna have more power over your spirit. And if you continually feeding it more and more, and your spirit is starving, be like, we ain't been to church in like 3 weeks, bro. I need something. We ain't had no spiritual word. We ain't had nothing. It's all weak. And then your flesh like, oh, we about to have a time tonight. Anything you see, you're going to end up watching. And then next thing you know, you're going to be back there repenting, asking God to forgive you. You're going to be feeling all bad and everything. And the cycle going to continue. So you have to create a lifestyle of watching what you see, what you hear, and fasting. What we do, me and my wife, and those who follow us, we have ministries called Truth Seekers. We fast first 3 days every month. That's just what we do. We give the first 3 days to God, right? So I would encourage that you do that, and prayer. And lastly, getting around like-minded people. When I say like-minded, not like-minded people where you at now, but where you will want to be. You might need to change your circle up, because you're going to need people to hold you accountable. And it's going to be hard doing it alone. You're going to need people to hold you accountable for what you're doing. Just like, you see people in the gym, they got fitness buddies, and they hold them accountable, and they push people through. Like when you got a trainer, they're going to push you through, or even a fitness buddy. Like you on that last rep, they're going to be like, come on, you could do it. Push, push, push. If you're doing that by yourself, you're going to be like, yeah, I had enough. And that's the problem. So you're going to need some type of accountability. All right. So I'm going to leave it there. It was a lot. If this video helped you or blessed you, please share it to other people. Like, comment, subscribe. And I'm going to just keep coming with more content from a Christian point of view. Remember, you live in this world, but we're not supposed to be of this world.